ng mga tao para makasama sila. Yung hindi makahabol sa tamang panahon, tanungin na lang yung mga nauna. Okay, good afternoon, students. We'll continue now with our discussion about contract law. We are now dealing with the general provisions which have to do with the general characteristics of a contract, which we have started last week, as well as the various aspects as to what makes a proper contract. Bakit natin pinag-aaralan to? Dahil kung alam na natin ano ang katangian ng isang tama o legal na kontrata, malalaman natin kung ang ating pinag-aaralang kontrata ay ayon sa batas o hindi. At kung alam natin ano ang ayon sa batas, makakaiwas tayo sa peligro. Kung sakaling tayo ay empleyado ng isang kumpanya, maiiwas natin ang ating kumpanya. At kung sakaling tayo may sariling business o kalakal, makakaiwas tayo sa peligro. Everything that we have been discussing this entire semester leads to these very few provisions. The law on obligations is the basis of the law on contracts. The law on contracts exists only because the ability of private parties to contract is pivotal. It is central to the operation of a capitalist trading system. The reason why the law says, pinag-aralan natin to last week, na the parties can agree to almost anything and impose whatever terms or conditions they want, as long as it is not contrary to law, public policy, public morals, or the public common good, the public good. So you always should remember that. Those are the only exceptions to what parties cannot contract. Otherwise, they can contract. So my experience, I was telling you this last time, my experience that there are so many forms of contracts. I gave you, I think, the example of my nephew. My nephew is a genius. He developed a bot, an app in Discord, and he's asking me to prepare a privacy policy contract, which users of his app sign up to. So I'd like you to remind you again, let's look at the civil code. (1308) of the Civil Code tells us that the contracts must bind both parties. It cannot be left to the will of one of them. However, if you look at this next provisions in the law, there are times when the contract may deal with a third party or may be left to the will of a third party. So I want you to simply just read Medrano. Yeah. Okay. I'd just like you to look at 1309, which is self-explanatory, and 1311. So if you're taking down notes, these are the things you may want to take a look at. Uh, Contracts are assignable, and the effects, the consequences of contracts retroact to the party as well as his assigns. No? Assigns are those who are intimate with him, his business partners. If it's in the case of a conjugal obligation, to the wife and the conjugal property, and the heirs. In other words, what is civilly demandable? What can be demanded under civil law can be demanded from the contracting party, his assigns, and his heirs. So, the reason why this is important is because a contract is mutually demandable, and if the other party does not meet with the obligations under the contract, that party may be sued. And when that party is dead or is insolvent or doesn't have sufficient assets but is not yet bankrupt, you may want to go against that person's assigns and heirs because it's possible under certain circumstances. Look at the second paragraph of 1311. That is what's called an obligation pour autrui, which is French. It is an obligation for a third person. And sasabi natin, contract does not involve third persons, but it may affect third persons. For example, in the example of a trust, ang mga magulang natin, dahil meron silang assets, pwede silang magtayo ng trust para sa kanilang mga anak habang wala pang sariling trabaho, sariling bahay ang mga ito. So, a parent can set up a trust for his or her child until that child is married and has his or her own responsibilities. So the trust will provide certain benefits to the person. The person pour autrui, the person for whom the trust was created. Is the consent of the son or the daughter of the parent required? No, because it can be established. But once the trust starts giving out the benefits, it is now in the nature of a donation. And every donation must be accepted. And if it is a real right, in other words, a right involving real property or its improvements or real rights, it must be in a public document. So a donation, in fact, is a form of contract. But once it is effected, once it is accepted by the donee. Now, let us look at Article 1313. Article 1313 is what's called contractual tort. I'll show you my contractual tort is committed when a person causes somebody to violate a subsisting contract. Now, the contract may be void or voidable, but the mere fact that a person is trying to make the other party or another one of the parties, may not be one of the parties to the contract, maybe somebody else, violate the contract is an example of contractual tort. So I will write that down. In large letters. Just take a look at the screen. So please take note of that. I will go back to the civil code. So 1314 is example of contractual tort. 1314, not 1313. Underline the wrong thing. 1315 is the essence of contractual law. When parties agree, they have all of the freedom to agree to whatever terms and conditions they want for any possible object or cause or consideration. The law allows them to do that because we follow a capitalist entrepreneurial system. What it also means is that all of the parties are liable for the consequences. There are rights and there are consequences. Diba? We have rights under the Constitution. We also have consequences for having these rights. The right to be a citizen and to enjoy the benefits of Philippine citizenship entail the responsibility, the liability to fight for this country if there's a war. Likewise, in contracts, parties can agree, but if they don't follow what they agreed on, if they trifle with the contract or they trifle with the law, they will be responsible for consequences in keeping with good faith, usage, and law. So please note that. $13.16 is something you will encounter when you're already practicing. Real contracts that involve real rights or involve actual things, are perfected upon delivery. Otherwise, and please remember this, a contract is perfected upon meeting of the minds. Once the parties agree as to what they are contracting for, how much, what is the object of their agreement, what are the consequences. Once they agree on that, even if it is not written down, the contract is perfected. And perfection of contract is important because that is when the parties can now determine the rights. The right for performance, satisfaction, the right to sue for damages, the right to be compensated if there is breach of contract or bad faith. So we're now at 1318. Very important. The very basic elements of a contract. It is useful to remember these, students, because it is so basic. It's like the ABC. Okay? Consent, which we will be discussing in a short while. That is our topic for today. Object and cause. Cause of the obligation is really what's called in common law as consideration. Every contract must have a valid consideration. In other words, the parties agreed because they're after something. I discussed this with you last time. Consideration involves even liberality. That's why a donation is a contract. Because liberality is a cause unto itself. When you want to give something to your neighbor or to your parents or to your sister or to a scholar who you want to support, the objective of your cost of the obligation as the giver, as the donor, is not to gain money or to obtain something else. Well, maybe there is. Some people donate. Some people are very active in charitable causes because they want to be known, they want to be famous, they want to be cited, and people tell them that they're nice people. But subjectively, the only cause, the only consideration is liberality, generosity. That is the consideration for acts of liberality like donations. So although the corporate, ang tawag natin dito kwan uh, corporate social responsibility. You will beat that when you go into your OJT, CSR, corporate social responsibility. Ang mga korporasyon hindi lang dapat kumikita, dapat nagbibigay rin sila sa komunidad, sa bayan. So they must have corporate social responsibility. They must have charitable causes. They must have social causes. Many companies espouse fighting climate change or improving the health of the seas or the waters. All of these public causes, which they give money to and they spend time with, di ba? Okay. Consent. Consent is the basis of contract law. Vitiated consent. Consent which is not full and voluntary makes the contract void or voidable depending on the nature of the vitiated consent. We will take that up shortly. Consent means that you have accepted the obligation. You have accepted the contract. There is a meeting of the mind and acceptance upon which the thing and the cause are to be constitute the contract. The offer must be certain and the acceptance absolute. So a qualified acceptance, please note, is merely a counter offer. It has to be a full acceptance. So this thing about acceptance by letter telegram, what is a telegram? Telegram is an app now, di ba? Wala na nagka-telegrama ngayon. But the general principle is correct, even in electronic communications. Acceptance does not occur until it has come to your knowledge. And in electronic media, it's very easy to determine because every electronic message is time tagged. There is a time tag, and you can tell when the person actually acknowledged or accepted the contract. Acceptance may be expressed or implied, but it's better if it's expressed. Kasi implied, magkakagulo tayo dyan. As you'll see later on, pag mag-implied, if there's any vagueness in the contract, laging problema yan. My advice to you, as practitioners, and my advice to you as students is, we avoid vague contracts and we should avoid implied acceptance. But acceptance is implied when the party accepts or participates in the contract anyway. Diba? Hindi nga siya nagsabing oo, kaso pumayag naman. Binigay niya naman yung lupa o hindi, nagpahiram siya ng pera. Diba? So that is implied. The mere fact that the person is participating in the contract means he has accepted the contract. He or she has accepted the contract. So, we will talk about ratification later on. Ratification. I remember this offer thing. Ito yung sa asterisk na pinabasa ko sa inyo. Remember when the Romans decided that the way to destroy the Gaulish village was to inundate them with capitalism, di ba? Inundate them with money. Inundate them with greed. So what did the Roman do? He had a continuing offer to buy all the menhirs. Remember that activity, students? That is a continuing offer. That is already one half of a contract. Once somebody from the village comes and brings a menhir to that Roman army camp, the Roman official who gave the continuing offer is duty bound to accept that item because he was the one who gave the offer. The appearance of a Gaul bringing a menhir to that camp is an acceptance of his continuing offer. Bakit natin pinag-usapan si Asterix? Maraming ganyan ngayon. Sa Lazada, di ba? 11.11 kahapon, hanggang ngayon meron pa rin. Sa Shopee, when they offer vouchers, discounts, up to 50% off. When they offer buy one, take one. when they offer free shipping, those are continuing offers. It's one half of the contract. Once you accept by indicating the order and the price that you want, a contract is perfected. And Lazada is duty bound to deliver, and you as the buyer is duty bound to pay. Diba? So sometimes you pay right after you order or you pay COD. Ang suggestion ko sa inyo, COD. Kahit marami kayong pera. Ha? Kasi ang daming scam. Ang daming scam. Huwag kayong bibili ng flash drive sa Lazada. Peke yung mga yan. Tiyak yan. Lalo na yung mga 200 pesos na flash drive. Peke yan. Peke. Take my word for it. My brother's a computer expert. Okay. So, it's very timely itong pinag-aaralan natin. Look at 1324. Period. When there's a period to accept, then the offer may be withdrawn anytime before the period expires. But once it is accepted, yun na yun. No? Because you're the one making an offer. Common sense yun. Ito yung gusto kong pag-usapan ngayon. This clashes 1325. Pakibasa, pakinote yan sa notes nyo. 1325 clashes the consumer code. But it is the general law. It is the general principle. Business advertisements are not definite offers, but merely invitations for others to participate. That's what it means here. It says mere invitations to make an offer, but actually no. When, let's say, Procter & Gamble has a contest, di ba? You accumulate points whenever you buy a certain Procter & Gamble product electronically, and when you have enough points, you are entitled to a raffle ticket. Electronic rin, raffle ticket. That is just an offer. But once you have participated and you joined and you gave a certain, you bought certain Procter & Gamble products, and then you showed proof of purchase and you were eligible for the lottery, for the sweepstakes, the contest, that is now a consummated, a perfected contract. In other words, Procter & Gamble has to give you the price if you are qualified. If you win that raffle, if it is a legitimate raffle. And many of these big companies, hindi kaya i-scam yan because they are controlled by the DTI and they have their reputations more important than giving 2 million, 10 million to a certain person. Ano? Procter & Gamble is a multi-billion dollar enterprise around the world. So they will not ruin their names by offering a scam. But do you remember? You will not remember because it's a long time before all of you were born. Pepsi had this promo that a certain, you buy Coke, Pepsi, and then underneath there's a Tansan. Tansan pa kasi noon eh. Wala pang bote. There's a number, and if you have a certain number, you're entitled to a prize. They forgot to mention, or they did not mention in their advertisements, that when you get that number, it is not automatically a prize. It entitles you to be qualified for a prize. Nakita niyo yung difference? It is not an offer to give a prize. It's only an offer for you to be eligible to qualify for a prize. Ang nangyari, there were thousands of people on that number. Pepsi printed pala so many of that number. So it became a scam. It became quite a scandal. Pepsi never intended to give those with that certain number a prize. They were just planning to give those people with a certain number qualification to win a certain prize. Yun ang mahirap doon. So, be careful of advertisements, whether in the newspaper, in Facebook, in social media, Google, or even in your communities. Because a business advertisement is not really an offer as understood here in contract law. It is only an invitation. But once you adhere, once you participate, you have accepted their offer. Likewise, 1326, but this is for bidders. There are stricter rules for bidding. So just take note of 1326. But I tell you, the rules for bidding are stricter than that. We talk about, and if you look at my my messenger message to you about our lecture plan, we have what's called a contract of adhesion. A contract of adhesion is a written contract which has already been prepared by one of the parties, in which that party now offers to the other party. Ano? So A prepared a written contract. Nandun na lahat. Who are the parties, what is the object of the contract, what is the cause of the contract, what are the penalties, where shall the suit be instituted in case there is a suit, what are the damages to be sought if there are liquidated damages. All of these are features of a contract. Well, written down there. A gives this to B. What is the prerogative of B? The prerogative of B now is take it or leave it. Kasi yung kontrata nakasulat na. Hindi niya pwede sabihin, ay pwede ba natin palitan tong paragraph 3 at saka paragraph 11? Tapos alam mo yung paragraph 42, hindi na kailangan yan. Magkaibigan naman tayo. Wala nang penalty contract, wala nang penalty clause. Magkaibigan naman tayo eh. You cannot do that. And what is the example of this, my dear students? Almost everything in the commercial life. Kontrata nyo sa tubig, kontrata nyo sa kuryente, kontrata nyo sa cellphone, kahit na kanyan, kahit na prepaid. The prepaid card, o yung pag-follow nyo sa sari-sari store, that is a contract. You are contracting with the cellphone company through that sari-sari store, who is its agent, that they will provide you certain service and that you will pay a certain sum. Walang kasulatan. Kaya sa sari-sari store, meron ba sasabihin ba ni Manang, Renalyn ko, ito yung kontrata, tingnan mo, 20 pages lang, ang liit-liit ng sulat. Signan mo muna bago kita bigyan ng load na 10 piso. Meron mang ganon? Wala di ba? You pay 10 pesos, you get 10 pesos worth of load. You confirm mo kasi makikita mo doon sa telepono mo, may load ka na. But that is a contract. Where is the contract of all of the provisions of that prepaid cell phone service? It's a piece of paper or it's online. And you're assumed to have read it by the mere fact that you're using your cell phone and your cell phone is using a prepaid service of Globe or Smart. Meron pa bang dito? I never heard that anybody used dito. Alokohan niya ang panahon ni Duterte. Another scam. Maraming scam nung panahon ni Duterte. Nagsisilabasan lang ngayon. Okay. That is a contract of adhesion. Kasi pag tayo ay nakapagkontrata para sa cellphone service, pag tayo nakapagkontrata sa tubig, sa kuryente, we do not have any choice but to accept or dismiss, di ba? Pag ayaw mo yung terms nila, ayaw mo na pwedeng kunin ng Meralco yung metro pag hindi ka magbayad, wag kang makipagkontrata sa Meralco. Kumuha ka ng sarili mong kuryente kung gusto mo. O mabuhay ka na walang kuryente. Di ba? That is, by the way, classes, my plan. I'm a Baguio resident. We have a very nice house in Baguio with water and electricity, etc. But my ambition really is to live outside of Baguio, because Baguio, although it's a beautiful city, it's a very beautiful city. I love Baguio City, but I'd rather live outside. I'm a mountain boy, so I live in the mountains. Walang kuryente doon. I live using solar energy. Hopefully, I'll tell you about it once I do it. I already have a design for my house. The only problem now is having the money. Kasi mahal na rin ang lupa kahit sa labas ng Baguio. The reason why I don't want to stay in Baguio anymore is besides the pollution, and besides the fact that I've lived in cities my entire life, I'm sick and tired of it, is the fact that it's so hard to park inside our own house. I went there 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I almost could not park near my house. I could not get into my garage. So it's really crazy. Okay. 1330, my dear friends. The most important words in contract law. Consent which is gained through violence, mistake, intimidation, undue influence, or fraud is voidable. Yan yung sinasabi ko kanina. Matindi ito. Kung gusto nyo makalusot sa kontrata, you have to be able to prove mistake. Self-explanatory mistake, di ba? Akala mo, yung sinasaynan mo ay kontrata para sa upa. Yung pala kontrata para sa mortgage. Aba, malaking diferensya yun. Di ba? Malaking diferensya yun. That's a huge mistake. Because a contract of mortgage it's possible for the other party to own your property instead of just renting it. Diba? Oh. So, mistake. Violence, self-explanatory. Kung tinatakot ka, anything done through violence is wrong and is immediately voidable. Intimidation is the same as violence. Dito yung undue influence. Anong difference ng undue influence sa intimidation? The easiest example I can give, ladies and gentlemen, is between boyfriend and girlfriend, between best friend and best friend, between husband and wife. Under Philippine law, the husband and the wife cannot donate to each other because that is in fraud of creditors. The conjugal partnership kasi, like my wife and I own certain properties. Kung meron kaming utang at wala kaming cash, yan ang hahabulin ng taong pinagkakautangan namin, our conjugal properties. So I cannot just, kunwari, idodonate ko sa misis ko or kunwari, idodonate ko sa anak ko. That is in fraud of creditors. We studied that, remember? When we were talking about obligations. Ito yung example nun, undue influence. So because of undue influence, sinabi na ng law on marriage that husband and wife cannot donate unto each other except for moderate gifts during moments or occasions of family Thanksgiving or family celebration. So birthday, my 60th birthday, my wife gave me a party in Bali, Indonesia. So kung mayaman kayo, like halimbawa si Hart at saka si sino ba to? Kaibigan pa ni Mrs. Escudero, they can give each other more expensive gifts, jewelry, ano? But you cannot, hindi mo pwede bigay sa Mrs. mo buong apartment building o buong bahay, di ba? Kasi that forms part of the conjugal partnership of gains and losses and is liable for creditors and heirs. Properties can be later on inherited. So the children might be defrauded by a donation from one to the other of a conjugal asset. So 1331 just defines what is mistake. And when we talk about 1332 and 13 welcome, Miss Martinez. Okay, so 1332 is incapacity. Okay, when a person, you cannot take advantage of a person who is ignorant. So maraming nangyari ganyan sa Cordilleras, di ba? The people there were not really well educated, so pinagsamantalahan sila and their lands were lost. So technically those were void transactions, but it's been corrected through the Indigenous Peoples Acts laws. Ano? There are several Indigenous Peoples laws that have been enacted to correct that vitiation of consent because of inability to read, or the contract is written in a language which is unknown for him or could not be understood. So kami mga abogadong ginagawa namin, when we deal, I told you, di ba, last time I dealt with urban poor. When I explained my draft agreement that I prepared for the land, for the person who wanted to buy this large tract of land sa San Mateo, Montalban, I had to explain to them, I had to convene in a public place and explain to them in very ordinary language, Tagalog, kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng kontrata. Kasi ang gusto, ayaw kong isipin nila na may pera ka agad. Yun ang mahirap when you deal with people, akala nila may pera ka agad. Wala pang pera yun kasi ibibenta pa, kung ibibenta namin yon doon sa taong yon, yung taong yung ibibenta niya pa sa gobyerno, doon lang siya kikita. She would have earned several billions, if not tens of billions of pesos, and then paid my clients, maybe, kasi ang dami nila, 1 billion, ang dami nila, magkano lang makukuha ng bawat isa. There were hundreds of claimants which I represented. There were hundreds of others that I did not represent. So that's what we do about 1332. So please read 1333, 1334. It defines what is violence, what is intimidation, what is undue influence, and misrepresentation. Mahirap tong misrepresentation kasi please take a look at 1342. The misrepresentation must be serious so that it will enable the other person to make it will cause the other person to make a mistake. So yun ang mahirap dito because look at 1343. Misrepresentation made in good faith may not be fraudulent. So what is the civil code telling us? Not every misrepresentation is fraudulent. In other words, kuminsan, and this is what we talk about in 1340, the usual exaggerations in trade. When the other party had to know the fact, had an opportunity to know the facts. Yung mahirap dito sa misrepresentations. Not all misrepresentations are fraudulent. Hindi lahat ng misrepresentation is a lie, di ba? Hindi lahat ng pagsisinungaling tungkol sa kontrata, tungkol sa transaksyon ay illegal. Hindi silang lahat pandaraya. Kasi kung minsan, exaggeration lang yan. Exage lang. Di ba? Ganito. Si Aliyah, nagbebenta ng lupa. Bagong development doon sa bundok ng Binangonan. Kaso ang problema sa atin lang ha. Sa amin lang ni Aliyah, Miss Aliyah de los Santos. Sa aming dalawa lang. Alam namin na ang problema doon kasi yung developer, hindi niya pa nakuha lahat ng titulo. Tapos wala pang permit galing sa HUDC, from the government agencies. Hindi pa cleared sa local government. In fact, wala pang clearance sa DNR kasi kailangan magputol ng mga puno. Nasa bundok eh. Tapos, wala pang right of way. Bibilhin pa yung right of way doon sa mga magsasaka along the way. Wait, madali na yan kasi meron ng taong naglalakad. Pinupunta na bawat magsasaka, makakuha ng right of way. Magandang daan ang gagawin ng developer dyan. Tapos, madali rin kausapin yung DNR. Bayaran lang nila. Makakuha silang permit to cut trees. Di ba? Tapos i-donate nila yung mga troso sa DNR o ibigay nila sa DNR director. Ganun ang style doon. May hindi nyo narinig yun, ha? Bulong-bulungan lang yun. Tapos yung requirements ng HUD-C, sila kasi nagbibigay ng clearance para magbenta ng lupa sa publiko, comply sila kasi gusto nila talaga magbenta. Magandang lugar to, ang ganda ng view, kitang-kita ang Laguna de Bay. Laguna de Bay means Lake of Bay. So it's wrong to say Laguna Lake. Because Laguna Lake means lake. Meron bang ganon? Ilog. Lawa. Para tayong tanga, di ba? I always keep telling, Laguna de Bay, the lake is called Bay. It's called Laguna, Lawa ng Bay. The place is Bay. It is not Laguna. Okay. Gusto ibenta ni Aliyah kay Miss Barosa. Si Miss Barosa, nanalo sa sweepstake, bibili ng house and lot para sa mga magulang niya. Nagustuhan niya yun kasi sinabi ni Miss Aliyah, ay, ang ganda rito, ang sarap ng hangin. May fog pa, para ka na sa Baguio, Tagaytay. Diba? Tapos, ang amoy ng pine trees, ang sarap ng amoy ng pine trees. Hindi makapunta si Miss Barosa doon. Kasi bundok, wala pang daan. Ginagawa pala yung right of way. Naniwala siya kay Miss Aliyah. Is that a misrepresentation o exage lang? Depende. Kung si Miss Barosa naniwala naman, yun lang ang pinaniwalaan niya, hindi niya trinay na i-verify para pumunta ron, tignan ko totoo, na maganda yung view, gano'n, hindi natin masasabing fraudulent yan kasi what does it say in 1340? The usual exaggerations in trade. When the other party had an opportunity to confirm or check if it is true or not. Di ba? Kaya kung sabihin mo, itong used car ko, Anghel mga lubdan, bilhin mo kasi ang ganda nito, fresh na fresh, walang kalampag, walang sira. Si Anghel, ang dapat gawin niya kasi bumibili siya ng second hand na kotse, hindi lang siya maniniwala sa kwento-kwento nung nagbebenta ng kotse. Kailangan magdala siya ng mekaniko. Tingnan nila yung computer ng sasakyan kung tama nga ba, hindi na baha o hindi nasira. Tingnan nila yung isa ilalim, iakyat nila sa sasakyan, tingnan nila sa ilalim kung wala bang kalampag. Tingnan nila, buksan nila yung engine hood, tingnan nila kung mayroon mang problema. Test drive nila! So when you make a misrepresentation, but the other party did not try to verify if what you are saying is merely an exaggeration of trade or one of the usual things that people say when they're trying to entice another person to part with their money, it's not always fraudulent. Dito ang mahirap. What is fraudulent and what is not? Common sense na lang mga kaibigan, ano? This is my personal lesson to you as a trial litigator. Ang dami ko na hinawakan na kasong ganito. If it's too good to be true, it probably is not. Di ba? Saan natin nakikita yan? Sa Lazada at Shopee. When you see something in Shopee and Lazada, if it looks too good to be true, if it's too cheap to be true, nag-isip-isip ka na. So ako kasi, ang aking policy sa Lazada, never buy something na hindi mo kayang mawala. It's like gambling. Do not go to the casino and gamble 1 million pesos if you cannot afford it. When you gamble, you must be willing to win 1 million pesos. You must be willing to lose 1 million pesos. Hindi masakit sa loob mo, hindi kawawa pamilya mo. Likewise in Lazada, I don't buy anything expensive para kung dumating at scam, pasensya na lang. Di ba? Okay. I bought a second-hand bike. Because I'm not really an avid biker. I'm not like my brother who's a dentist. He's a very successful dentist. He buys a 100,000 peso bike, carbon fiber. Because he can afford to, and he's really a biker. Ako hindi. I only bike once in a while. So I just bought a second-hand Japanese bike. Natawaran ko pa sa 5,000, natawaran ko pang 4,500. So binalan ko ng mga accessories sa Lazada para hindi naman mukhang kawawa. Di ba? Kasi second-hand the bike. Bumili ako ng yung mirrors. Kasi maganda may mirrors. I've been biking since I was a kid. I lived in Baguio City, and biking in Baguio City is pang Puro Luzon yan because up and down. Kuminsan may angkas pa ako. So pag nililigawan ako, angkas ko yan, di ba? So, I buy accessories from Lazada. Tail lights, alam mo ngayon, ang ganda, LED na, USB chargeable. I bought these mirrors. Ang ganda ng picture sa Lazada. Ang ganda ng mirrors. Kitang-kita mo sa likod yung mga sasakyan. Safe na safe ka sa daan. Yung dumating, ganito kaliit, oh. Ganyan kaliit. You would, you couldn't hardly see anything. But how much did it cost me? $200. So, 200 pesos worth of lesson for Attorney Balanan. Ganun ang dapat sa Lazada. So these are not, they're verging on fraudulent because fraudulent representations to the public in terms of selling items is covered by the Consumer Act now, not by the Civil Code. Okay? So dapat mag-ingat yung mga Lazada at Shopee. Bibili ka ng t-shirt kasing nipis, kasing mas makapal pa yung stockings eh. Kasi bili ka ng winter coat, ang nipis-nipis. Unang gamit pa lang sa Korea, popsicle ka na kaagad, di ba? It's verging on fraudulent. Actually, if I were the lawyer for Lazada and Shopee, I would advise them to get rid of this. At saka those who are selling this fake USB drives, fake mini SD cards, kayo lahat mga yan. I would advise them not to do that anymore. Kasi it's not misrepresentation anymore, it's fraud. As a lawyer, I would tell them it's fraud. When you tell a person who is living in Binangonan, whose only access to the world is the Wi-Fi, and you're showing him or her a picture of a bicycle rear view mirror that looks so beautiful, but in fact only 1 inch in diameter, nanloloko ka, di ba? Nanloloko ka. That is consumer fraud. Okay. Why are we talking about these things? Because when a contract is fraudulent, it is voidable. Why do we say it's voidable? Because baka lang gusto mo, tulad ako. I cannot say that the contract to sell me those 1 inch useless bicycle mirrors is void because tinanggap ko naman. Okay lang sa akin. 200 pesos, 175 pesos, ano ba yun? Rather than sue them, magkano? Too much trouble. Nasa China pa yan. Baka kunin pa yung ating island sa West Philippine Sea. Bilang kapalit. So look at 1944. In order that fraud may make a contract voidable, it should be serious. And it did not come from both parties. Pag naglolokohan ang dalawang parties, that is called impari delicto. They are both equally at fault. Impari delicto, that's Latin again. So, when it's voidable, the contract will become void, but the other party is liable for damages. Kasi, naloko siya eh. And whenever you take advantage of somebody, you will have to pay damages, moral damages, nominal damages for breaking the law. So, I'll introduce you now to another term. Simulation of contract. Please read the provision. It is when there is really no contract or they are trying to hide their true agreement. So please take a look at 1346. An absolutely simulated or fictitious contract is void. Not voidable, void. In other words, oops. Ano nakabilis? Bakit ang bilis? 10 minutes. Okay. Voidable means what the innocent party has the right to sue or to go to court and sue and collect damages. Void means it's already void. All the courts have to do is say how much the damages are. So we have a few minutes left because Google restricts us to 1 hour. I'll give you 15 minutes to hopefully fix up your notes. We will meet up. It's 3:18 on my laptop. We'll meet up at 3:30. 1 hour na lang mga kaibigan. Ha? The reason why I want to do this is because I want to finish lahat ng ating subject matter in time for what happened to the academic calendar?